All right.
Let's get it going.
So yeah, 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode. I believe this is episode 21 of the Huge Up Interviews. I'm Alistair McInnes, joined with forever, as always, with Peter Morris. Say hello.
Hi guys.
And today we have our first, our actual first reoccurrence of somebody. We have Christine from Super Duper.
I'm back.
You're first. We're your first guest to actually return for an interview.
Nice.
Obviously, we're not talking about Super Duper today. We're talking with your new partners, Mantic Digital Arts, with Soy and with Luke. So say hello.
Hi. Hello.
Fantastic. So we're going to go right out there and ask, what do you feel is the classification of an educational game? Because that's what you guys specialize in.
Wow. That's a big one.
Drop a big one at the start,
Yeah, I
right
just want to say, can you just give a quick pitch of who you guys are, obviously as Mantis Digital Arts, but also like after maybe talk about what you guys, because you guys specialize in educational games, and I feel like if we can hit an understanding on what that means to you guys, it will help the rest of this. Cause
Yeah. So I think so. This is quite. To me, an educational game is pretty much any game. I grew up playing video games, as most people that have come on your podcast, and you guys probably did as well. And I learned something from all of them. So in my mind, when I started Mantis Digital Arts, it wasn't necessarily about creating video games that were just purely educational and teaching you mathematics or science or English or reading or whatever subject are taught in schools. It was more about creating a game that's engaging and fun that makes children walk away from it and want to learn more. And so the first game that we started with 4 years ago was called BuzzWizz Bees, and we spent 9 months building a prototype of this game that was all built in craft-like materials. So we actually handcrafted the entire environment out of construction paper and yarn and tissue paper and all kinds of real things that kids would use in everyday crafts at home. The goal of the game was actually to get kids playing as bees from different environments around the world and seeing how bees live and how they contribute to our food supply as humans. So we built a good prototype of that in 9 months, and the goal is just to get a fun experience where they could see what it's like to be a bee and then want to go leave the game and talk with their parents or their friends about it.
That's a really beautiful concept. I really love that. Especially the idea of becoming a bee. Yeah, it's just a great thing. I like the idea of using children's sort of craft kits to make the game so they can relate to it better. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, so I think, for me, and I'll let Luke and Christine speak as well, but for me, like it's not necessarily about us wanting to create educational games. It's more about us wanting to create games that kids would find engaging, that along the way teach them one or two things that they can then use in the world around them.
Awesome. So about the rest of you then. How about you, Luke and Chris?
Yeah, if you noticed, there's kind of like a very specially placed ambiguity in what he just said. He said that that we make educational games, but every game he's ever played, he's learned from. So pretty much every game is an educational game then.
Yeah.
So we just make games basically.
That's right.
We have like a little identity crisis, but yeah.
So, but when people think of Mantis Digital Arts, they will of course think more of the educational side of video games, and there's a sort of stigma that's attached to that. How would you guys overcome that when you kind of talk to people about educational games and what you're making?
do you just say you make games?
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
No,
Like,
I'm the community manager for Mantis,
Yeah.
so I'm, putting us out there and stuff like that. And I haven't shied away from, education or saying that we make games with educational aspects or things like that. And I think it's because there's like such a stigma, I think it's even more necessary that we promote that aspect of what we do, just to kind of show that it can be user friendly for one, because a lot of times educational games are kind of seen as daunting, and they can be fun, which educational games are definitely almost always seen as boring. but that they can stand on their own as a game. And like Koi was saying, a second ago, like it's a game that has educational value, not necessarily an educational game. So just kind of showing people that exists and can work.
Definitely. And do you use any particular like design methods that you implement when making these sort of games to kind of give the educational feel? Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you approach? Do you approach games slightly differently, knowing that your demographic is to sort of teach kids?
I think that the way we would design is constantly evolving. Like when we first started on Buzz with Bees, I mean, that was before Luke and Christine were ever around. But when we first started on that one, the specific goal was give kids the capability to play as bees and see what it's like. And so the goal of the game dictated kind of how we thought about the design and what went into making the design. And so we had some very particular goals that we wanted to meet. But when you look at some of the newer games, like Null Space is a game that we just put out there and released after, I think that project sat still. Luke, you can keep me honest here, but that one wasn't worked on for probably the past 2 or 3 months at least.
Yeah.
And when we first started building that one, the goal was to build a mobile game, which helped to kind of dictate the design. And then all of a sudden we decided, well, we don't want to do that. We turned it into a desktop game. So I think that one kind of had an identity crisis. But then some of the other ones that we work on lately, it's more about just building something that's kind of engaging for the average gamer that would want to sit down and play something for a period of time. And as far as how we design for that, it's really just, in my opinion, starting with here's kind of the basic gameplay that we want to deliver to the player. And then we start forming the strategy for how we're going to build the visuals and the mechanics and everything around that. But I think that we're 4 years old, and I think we're still constantly evolving every project in terms of how we go about documenting our design and making sure that we're building the right thing.
So you actually answered my next question anyway, which was like, what comes first, the education or the game? And you said you think about the game first, and then you build the education is sort of hand in hand. Then really after that.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the project that we're building for as well. Like when when we're building a game that we're going to release that's not being built for someone else, because we do work on consulting engagements as well, where we build games for other people. But when we're working on games that we're going to release, we start with, here is an idea that someone puts out there to the team and says, hey, I think this would make a really fun game idea. And then everybody just kind of jumps in and says, yeah, well, what if you did this? What if you did this? What if you did this? And then we kind of hone in on those mechanics and those visual aspects that we think would be interesting. And I think that's where we kind of landed with Neon Needle, which is the one that's going to release into beta pretty soon. That one turned out really well. And Luke was the one that came up with the original idea. He was like, this would be fun. Let's do this. And we all just kind of jumped on and said, yeah, this is what would make it even better.
Fantastic. And so you said the company now is 4 years old. How's the team grown in that kind of time period? You mentioned like Luke and Christine have come on, but how big are you now as a company?
Now we have 14 members. At our peak, we were at 20. And when we started, we were only 3 4 years ago.
Oh, so wow, so it has grown quite a bit.
It is. It's gotten bigger. And that's been interesting for me, just as someone kind of trying to steer the ship. Getting used to leading that many people has been interesting. But maybe Luke has actually been with us for, was it 3 years, Luke? If not more?
I honestly have no idea.
It's all a blur.
A fun blur.
Yeah, the best blur of his life. I've been here. How long have I been here? 2 weeks. It's a blur for me too. 2 weeks now. 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Still sort of a baby with the company for the time being. Then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learning all the ropes and all the rest of it.
The most productive baby I have ever seen.
Hey, that's going on like my resume. Productive baby, community manager.
It's been great.
So Neon Needle is like going into beta. Do you want to like what is Neon Needle going to be about? Because like I've joined the beta, but I've not been able to find like a brief on what it is. So, uh, who's best to talk here?
Yeah,
Luke?
so basically it's a 2D arena game. Just it's like if you've ever played Agario, just everyone jumps into like some big box, and then the mechanics in Neon Needle are actually kind of hard to understand. It's your health is constantly decreasing, and when you hit 0, if you shoot someone, then you kill them. Otherwise, you swap life with them. So it's kind of like an assassination game where it's you're not going to be shooting very often, but when you do, somebody's probably going to die.
Nice. And so,
Huh.
what kind of elements? Because again, is it still classified as an educational game? What elements of teaching are you trying to kind of get across then in that particular game?
Yeah, so Neon Needle is not an educational game. Like it wasn't
Cool.
designed to be an educational game. None of the design has been about, how can we teach people anything. It's just a fun game, kind of like Agario.
Cool. So, yeah, so it's kind of, would you say it's like a 50-50 then between making games, like you said, for pure fun factor and then the other half for more of the educational purposes? Or is it more like 50-50, 75-25 or?
Well, yeah, that's like like Koi said, it's everything is constantly changing. Probably now, like pretty much everything we do on our own it's not set out from the start to be an educational game.
That's cool.
It's just like what kind of game would be cool for us to make, and a lot of games have inherent educational value, especially if you don't start out by trying to design a game that's just like trying to manipulate people and make them give you a lot of money. Then they can actually like have a good effect on people. So yeah.
And I think that, and Christine probably speak a little bit more to this, but like when we're designing games for ourselves at this point, and games that we're going to release on our own, for me, it's not necessarily about saying, okay, let's build this game, but what can we put into it that's educational? We specifically didn't do that for Neon Needle. We didn't necessarily want to inject a bunch of educational features into it, because the way that we're planning to approach education for kids is not necessarily through the games themselves, but it's through activities outside the game. And so Neon Needle is just a fun game, but it teaches you inherently logic, strategy, planning. And so what we're going to do is actually create collateral, like physical collateral, or print at home variations of projects or print at home board games that relate to Neon Needle. So these things that parents can download from our website, if their kids are interested in Neon Needle, then we have these artifacts and this collateral that's based on the Neon Needle universe that's also teaching them something else. And so it's not necessarily about the games themselves being educational. It's about how do we get kids interested in something and then wrap something educational around it outside of the game.
And I think
Sort of,
that's like easier sometimes to work backwards that way. I think it's going to be easier for parents and educators. Something that I've found just working with Mantis and trying to get educational materials together, and then also just I was a teacher for a couple years, and my mom's a teacher, and a lot of the trouble with using games in the classroom is oftentimes games that are educational games, made to be educational, marketed as educational, are very, very specific in what they teach. It's like one lesson, and so then a school or a school district pays for everybody to have this game, and it will teach them one very specific thing, and then they can't really use that game again. So it's a lot better, I think, the way we approach it is really general lessons, like Koi was saying, logic, or, planning ahead, or cause and effect, things like that with the games that we've got. And that will allow for a lot of different lessons or activities instead of just like, this one is about multiplying 2-digit numbers and that's all you can do with it.
Definitely, I really like that actually approach to educational games. In fact, before you guys came on, me and Al were on about our previous experiences with educational games, and you were very much right. When we thought about it, we were like, okay, it's trying to teach me maths, or it's trying to teach me English, and of course, your take is actually something that obviously was quite fresh. making the game first, and then sort of trying to teach them something within that game and going outside of that, like the idea of making board games. I love the idea of having, I actually said, artifacts that they can learn from.
Right.
And I'm actually looking, of course, on your website as well. You actually do board games. Is there a difference in making board games to digital, digital games, in your opinion?
Oh wow, yes. I think it's a very different process. I mean, fundamentally, designing a game is really designing something that the player, regardless of who they are, is going to find fun, engaging, and willing to share with friends or other people around them. So I think that board games and digital games have that in common. But when you're designing for a board game, it's all about the components of that board game that you're going to physically interact with. And we actually have a designer on our team that specifically only designs board games for us. So we keep the design of digital games completely separate from the design of the board games. And occasionally they will overlap. Like if we're building a game, a board game, and we're like, well, that could make a really interesting digital game as well. Then we'll bring in a designer that focuses on our video game and kind of merge them together and see how we can relate the two.
In the kind of regards to the needles, will it be like you'll have him helping out with the board game elements or the artifact side of it, or will it be purely the game designers that will do both sides of it?
I think that when we get to the point where we're going to do some sort of variation on Neon Needle for like a board or a card game, it would be the board game or card game designer that's on our team kind of playing through Neon Needle, coming up with some ideas, and then presenting them back to Luke and say, what do you think of this? And how does it tie into the digital game? And then we also have Christine, who obviously has already said she was an educator, but we have two other educators on our team that are focused on helping drive our educational vision. And so they would then look at the design that Luke and our board game designer put together and say, yeah, this could teach this thing or this thing or this thing. And then they start helping kind of design the games and the materials and the artifacts around Neon Needle as well.
That's really cool. And when in regards, of course, to making these games, in the UK they had, well, in the Euro they had a games fund before, of course, Brexit happened. I hope it does stop somehow. Please, someone stop the madness that is Brexit. But what is the US government like in regards to funding, say, educational games? And have you managed to tap into this resource at all?
I think that there is funding available through various avenues, that not necessarily even through the government is probably not even the best avenue in the U.S. I mean, you want to look at organizations like Games for Change as a funding partner for educational games, whether they're focused on children or the general public. It is possible to get grants, whether it be from the federal government or from local state governments. The problem that I've run into with those is that if you're a for-profit organization, it's harder to compete with those grants, whereas it's a lot easier if you're a nonprofit organization, which we are not. So typically I haven't even approached trying to get funding at the state or federal level. We've just been funding everything on our own.
Yeah.
So does that mean like full-time jobs, or have you had done freelance work as the company, or?
Primarily through freelance work. I mean, our first big project, we worked on building, I think it was like 24 games for a project with Panasonic in North America. And that funded us for quite a while. That project was shut down, but we're in the process of starting a new project with Panasonic. We're partnering with a few other organizations that are here in South Dakota, which is where I'm based and where Luke is based. And we're building some things for a local children's museum. So I think that we try to seek out these places that are also focused on education where possible, or where we can take something from the project that we're working on and make it educational on our own.
Koi, the birds where you are absolutely delightful.
They are, yes.
I'm glad. At least
I'm so into it. It's like I'm in a Disney movie.
Sorry, what was your question? You were about to say something.
So yeah, no, because so one of the things that made me really want to talk to you guys is because like I know people over here, like when we brought up the whole like funding thing, is because like I know people over here that work for Serious Games, who work in that little sector over here, and they get a lot of money from the government. They pretty much solely they're entrenched in the educational system. They work out of a university. They're lecturers at the university. They go around to other other places around Europe, and they are in that sector. But they at the same time that they don't seem to like spread out of that area at all. So like they don't like, and hearing that you guys are like doing pretty much the same thing, making games for education or educational purposes, but yet you also sell them on itch.io. I found that very fascinating, because just on that thing alone, because like the thing I hear coming out of from people that I know in the sector is like, over here is like, we make all this stuff, but yet no one knows about it.
Yeah.
And you guys are over in America just going like, well, we're not going to get backing from the government, so let's put it out. Let's make a game.
Yeah.
I think I like to take the least complex route if possible, and I think it would just be a very long process for us to try to get any sort of federal grants. Even state grants, I think, would take a lengthy amount of time, and I'm just not necessarily willing to go that route when I know that I could fund it on my own, and I could get the team to help me by doing some consulting work along the way. And that's worked for us, and it's been successful so far. So I think it also gives us freedom. Like we can create what we want. We don't have to take initiatives that somebody else is working on and try to fit within that outside of consulting engagements, obviously. I mean, there are scenarios, like we're working with an organization based out of Iowa that has asked us to build an online role-playing game that teaches kids about the negative consequences of bullying. And so obviously that's a big topic for anyone that's focused on education or kids or the school system at this point. And so we're working with them to design what would this game look like, and how are we going to get it out to a massive audience outside of the school system. And so our approach is kind of what drew them to us, because we weren't heavily entrenched in the school system, so that we have ideas about how to approach a general audience rather than just focused on the education system as a single organization.
Yeah, because like that's very interesting point, because yeah, you guys actually have that now. You actually have that outside perspective on what is very much an inbuilt industry, and I definitely feel like you guys are on something right now, because like the more something I keep hearing a lot of is like teachers are taking games like Minecraft is a big example I keep hearing about, and making mods for that to teach kids minor programming for like redstone mechanics.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you guys are now you guys are touching into, I feel like educational games are going to change in a really positive way in the next couple of years. And I feel like what you guys are going to do, what you guys are now doing, and what people are able to get out of these programs through Minecraft, I feel it's going to change very rapidly soon, and I'm very happy about that. Like I like the idea of people seeing games in a more positive and in a way more positive way in the next couple of years. And
yeah, and that's definitely like in line with what we're trying to do. Like teachers taking Minecraft, I've seen teachers take League of Legends, or games that they know their students are already playing these games. So if they're going to be playing it, what can we teach them from it? Like it's much easier to do it that way. So yeah, that's definitely in line with what we're up to.
Yeah,
I think there's some great examples of companies that are out there building educational games and kind of leading that charge of changing the way that education is kind of delivered in digital media. And so one of them is Shell Games. I've talked with Jesse Shell a few times, and he's obviously a big person that speaks at multiple conferences, whether they be game conference or ed tech conferences. He's a professor. He's been running Shell Games for I think 12 or 13 years now, and I've leaned on him a few times in terms of mentoring me in how to lead an educational games company and the things that we need to focus on. And I think that he's really helped me start to hone in my vision for what I want to do with us, which is quite a bit different from what they're doing, but still focused on the educational arena. And I really view kind of Shell Games as one of those companies that are out there leading the charge for how education is going to change.
And then in regards to say the educational testing that goes on, do you go to schools or do you like you doing an open beta of course at the moment for Neon Needles, but would you do that for like an educational game, or would you go around campuses? Would you go, you know, that sort of thing? What's your marketing strategy and how do you get good testing?
So I will take the first whack at this and then we'll hand it over to Christine. But I think I see every one of our games I view as potentially having multiple betas, right? And so if we take Neon Needle as an example, the first beta it's going to go through is with guys like yourself that are, you know, you're gamers, and we want you to try out our game, and we want you to enjoy it, and we want you to play it, and I want to enjoy playing it as a gamer, and Luke wants to, and Christine wants to. So we want that audience to enjoy what we're building, because we're not just focused on educational gaming as a single thing. But once we have the game mechanics finely tuned and we've ensured that it's enjoyable by the population that we're targeting, then we would potentially look at a second beta. It's like, okay, now we've developed kind of all the educational collateral that we think should go along with Neon Needle. Let's take it to a school system or take it to parents that homeschool and say, this is a game that we built. It's been tested. It's fun. We have a large community of people that are playing it. And here's why we think your students or your children could benefit from it as well, along with this collateral that we've created. And so then you're kind of in a second beta process where you're kind of targeting a different audience and you're marketing to different people, and they can now try it out and let you know if it's doing what you think it should do.
Yes.
Yes.
And do you regularly get feedback then from that?
Well, this is going to be our first round of beta testing with this one. So we're definitely hoping and banking on getting a lot of good feedback, and we're going to streamline that process. I've got just like a Google form that everybody who beta tests is going to get after the beta is done, just saying like, how was the playability, or what did you think of the graphics, or was it easy to understand? What can we do better? And just really getting as much from our beta testers as possible in terms of what needs to be tweaked, what works, what doesn't work. And then, you know, from there, like Coy was saying, going on to phase 2, which is working backwards with educational stuff, like looking at it. Okay, we have a game, we know how to polish it up and make it fun. How can we make it a teaching tool?
And I think that kind of speaks to the identity crisis that Luke was referring to earlier, right? I mean, we have 2 primary audiences that we have to market towards, and the first of them is gamers, and the second is teachers and parents. Primarily parents more than teachers, in my opinion. Because we're focused on, I'm not necessarily focused on getting our games in the classroom. I think that would be great if teachers find it useful and want to use it. But my focus more in starting Mantis was to get parents and children talking to each other more than teachers and children.
And have you had many like parents approach you afterwards, like give you great feedback, or like, you know, thanks so much? You know, what's your relationship really with those parents?
Yeah. So when we finished our prototype of BuzzWizz Bees, we had it running on an iPad, and we walked out on the street downtown here in the city that I live in and just walked up to families and said, would you like to try out a new game? And handed our iPads to the children. And it was really interesting to watch how, as the children started enjoying it and laughing and smiling, the parents got closer to the children and looking over their shoulder and started asking them questions about what was happening on the screen. Like, oh, look at the QP. What is it doing? Why did you guys build this? And started asking us questions, and the children started asking us questions. And to me, like, that was just kind of reaffirming my belief in what we were doing.
Definitely, that the game should come first, really, but the educational should be kind of put in place correctly rather than full-fronted.
Yeah.
And I guess that will break the stigma, won't it? You know, if you guys keep up the work and every other company follows sort of your lead, that finally that the educational stigma that's going on will be broken.
That's a lot of burden on us.
Yeah, it's all down to you guys. You know, no one
Yay.
else.
We'll do
Lead
it.
the front. So, how many projects do you often have on the go then at one time?
Oh,
Yeah.
we've streamlined a lot. Like, and Luke can probably speak to this as well because he's worked on most of our projects. But over the past 4 years, well, even over the past 2 or 3 years, we've struggled with having a lot of different people focused on a lot of different things. And I think we're getting to the point now where we're starting to streamline it a bit, where we're focusing on one or two internal projects that we want to release on our own, in addition to all of our consulting work. Whereas before we were doing like 5 or 6 internal projects and then 5 or 6 consulting engagements, and it became really hectic. I mean, we're going through a really busy time right now with a bunch of consulting work, but once we get through kind of this bubble, we'll have more time to just focus on Neon Needle, another game, Galactic Joyride, which we're working on. And then Luke's actually working on building us an engine that we're going to use for all of our games going forward. So I think it's starting to minimize itself a bit. But right now we have like the games and the engines that I mentioned, and we have probably 6 or 7 consulting projects that we're working on as well that in some degree or another have either to do with gaming or education.
That's cool. And I've noticed you've also recently introduced the Mantis hatchery, of course, as sort of an asset-based sort of thing where people can purchase your assets. Is that potentially the way forward over the consultancy work? So it's more work that you're doing in-house and selling it out, or?
I think we're testing it now. Like Tyler, who is the artist that built that battle creature asset pack that you see out there, he's actually working on a dinosaur one now as well. But he worked with us on another game project that we had to put on the back burner for a while. And I just kind of realized as I was working with him and seeing what he was producing, like, he's really good. Like, he's fast as well. Like that stuff, that battle creature pack that he put together, it took him like a week and a half.
Wow.
And that stuff is beautiful.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was like we shouldn't hide his talent away. Like, we should have him building stuff for other people. So I asked him to build the battle creature pack. I was like, just build whatever you want that you think would be interesting to people that are building games and something they might want to use, and we'll put it out there and see what happens. And
Definitely.
So far, the response has been pretty good. I've been happy to see people are grabbing it and starting to talk about integrating it into their projects.
Would you ever use his art assets as part of your projects as well? Like, because again,
Yes.
they are very beautiful assets.
Yeah, I mean, so we were working on a project called the Defenders, which was built. We built a prototype of it in Unity, and the backstory behind the Defenders was that you had a child that had just moved with her parents to a new home in a new city because her father got a job teaching at a local university there, and after moving, she started having nightmares as a consequence of kind of readjusting to this new environment, and her toys and her stuffed animals would start coming to life at night to protect her. And so Tyler was the one that came in, and I hired him to build all of the 3D models and the characters and the environment for this game that we were working on. And that's where I just kind of noticed that he was just really amazing and really fast and produced really quality work. And so I was just like, once we had to shut down work on the Defenders for a little while to move on to some consulting stuff that needed to be done. But I do hope to get back to it. And in the meantime, I wanted Tyler producing what he was good at producing. So why not release it to the public and allow them to buy it as well?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, capitalize on that great talent he's got there. Looking again also on your website at the blog, you have a whole series about family bonding through video games. Have you found that actually making these games has helped your relationship with your families?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I started Mantis because of a few reasons, and one of them is my wife and I started homeschooling our daughter, who's now 10 years old, and as I started going through the process of watching her learn and talking with her about what she was learning at school, and then subsequently when we brought her home to homeschool her instead of taking her to school, I just kind of learned that there were a lot of gaps in the education process that I thought could be served through gaming and gaming-related materials. So that's where I kind of started forming Mantis Digital Arts, was in relation and response to that. And it's been interesting, like my daughter and I will play video games all the time together. She started playing Minecraft. I hated it at the time. Like I did not like Minecraft. But over time, as I started watching her play it and seeing some of the things that she could do with it, and she started teaching me Minecraft and things that you could do in it and showing me how to use it, and we started playing together. And that just kind of blossomed into us playing World of Warcraft together. We've started playing League of Legends together. We, from an indie perspective, we actually started playing Black Ice
Yeah.
together and sitting side by side and playing that. And I just thought it would be interesting to try to document what we were able to do as a father and daughter team, and enjoy playing games together and talking about what's happening and learning from each other during the process and seeing if other people could do that as well.
Definitely, and does that kind of help influence then the games that you're creating as well? Like seeing how she looks at kind of video games and how you look at video games.
I think inherently it does, just because we're together all the time at home. And when I'm working on, whether it's Luke coming up with Neon Needle and then showing it to me and then me playing it and her sitting there with me saying, this is really cool, can I play? And then I get to watch her play and then react based on that and hand Luke new features or new capabilities that we should build into it. Or if it's just me coming up with an idea and saying, hey, what do you think of this, to my 10-year-old daughter, and seeing what she responds with. So I think it definitely, I wouldn't say that I necessarily change the way that I work or the way that we design things. It's just because of the pure fact that she's there and constantly able to see what I'm working on, she influences the design.
Oh, interesting. And of course, with Neon Needle, how long has that now been in development for? I can't remember if you said.
I will let Luke speak.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Go for it, Luke.
I think it's been like 6 months or maybe 8 months.
And has the has the game evolved quite a lot in that 6 month period, or is it similar to the original design that you had?
It's pretty much exactly the original design, except some of the kind of the environment has changed, and kind of how the mechanics of the players are the same, but a lot of the specifics have changed, like how movement works and visual things and things like that. But yeah, it wasn't worked on for a couple months, so there's a little bit less change that happened that might have happened.
And is it using your own game engine? Because you guys mentioned before, of course, that you are now, Luke, creating your a game engine that you can use for all your future games. Is it like the prototype sort of thing, using that game engine?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Nice. It's taking. I imagine it's taking quite a long time to make your own game engine. It sounds very complicated, to be honest.
Well, no, not really. For this game, it probably only like the first month was dedicated to just making the game engine. It's just a 2D game engine, so it's a lot less complicated than like Unity or something like that.
You say that. That sounds very impressive to me. Oh, any particular questions you'd like to ask?
Oh God, I'm just I'm trying to think of some questions now. Sorry.
I knew you had quite a few on your mind. That's why I thought I'd give you a bit of time to speak. You know.
I've got nothing now.
You've put him on the spot.
Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry
feel
about
bad. I feel bad now. I got so jonesing for this interview. It's insane.
So I would say one thing that kind of is on the top of my mind all the time is I have never run a game company before in my life. So my background is all in enterprise software and working with large corporations on projects. So my day job is actually working for a startup that focuses on like business analytics and business consulting and things like that. So for me, like starting a game company everything was completely new. And I think it's been nice having people like Luke and Christine and some of our artists around that are, avid gamers, and they're able to bring their experience in gaming, and not only that, but also what they bring to the table in terms of skill set to help me kind of figure out the gaming world. I mean, I do game and I have gamed for a long time, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily have the right mindset to lead a company that's developing video games. So I think for me, it's a constant evolving of learning from the team that I'm working with at Mantis Digital Arts, and kind of reframing how we should exist as a company and how I can lead them in terms of how we release games to the market. And sometimes I think it becomes a little chaotic and confusing because they see that I'm learning as well. But it's been interesting for me to just kind of rely on the team to do what they do best. And
you think that's made the team closer because of that?
I think our team is interesting. Like I don't know that I ever really think about how close they work together. I just kind of hope that they do, and it pans out in the end. Like
You just sit in an office going, "Man, I hope my team is
I
working."
hope they're working right now.
that's the other thing. Like not many of us are in the same office together. I mean, everybody is working wherever they want to work, around town or on vacation or at the beach or whatever. But and I just kind of see, like Luke, if he needs an art asset, he'll grab one of the artists and say, "Hey, I need this, and can you get it to me today or tomorrow or whenever?" And then it shows up in the game. And so I think it's been really interesting for me to kind of realize that I don't necessarily have to lead the development of anything or the design of anything. I can leave it to the designers and the developers to worry about that. I just need to make sure they have the time available and the tools available to get the work done. And so
it's a very new
I think
age way of running a company, isn't it?
I think my question back to the audience that's listening to this is, like, how do they go about running their own companies, and how do they learn to do that? Because, I definitely would want to learn from anyone that's been doing it. So I don't know if, based on other people that you guys have interviewed, if you've had that conversation with them and how they get started and how they focus on kind of leading the people that are with them.
From what we've got from our interviews, trial by fire.
There we go.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's kind of how we ended up doing it with our company. It was just like neither one of us had any background in it. I mean, Garrett's an engineer, so at least he knows how to do all that. But I mean, I was a high school teacher, and now I'm CEO of our little company. So it's just it was very much just like a lot of trial and error and a lot of listening, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've yet to hear someone just stroll through this experience. Me and Pete can even talk to this because he's developing games. I developed games years ago, and we both had the similar experience of just like we don't know what we're doing, but we just each step we take, we're pretty much looking for a fall, and it's just clamoring for the next step that you're looking for.
Yeah, totally.
So you're not alone in the fear of it.
No.
But you look to your team, and if your team is doing well, then you're doing your job well.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're starting to see. Like everybody kind of comes up with these game ideas, and I'm just like, put them out there to the team, and let's see what happens and see what people kind of latch onto. One of the things that we did, I don't remember how long ago this was. Luke may remember, maybe a year and a half ago. We ran an internal game jam where I was just like, okay, everybody take the entire week away from whatever they're working on and just pair up designer, developer, and build something interesting and show them off at the end of the week. And let's see if anything sticks that we can then take forward and release. And so there were some really interesting projects that came out of it. I wouldn't say that we've released any of them, but there's definitely some projects that are sitting there waiting for us to come back to them at some point that were viable game ideas. And I'm hoping to be able to do that more regularly. So I think for me, it's like I learned so much from the team that's around me, probably more than they learned from me. But
what's been the biggest thing for you to kind of overcome personally, though? You said you're always learning. What do you think was the biggest step in becoming like a games developer or owner of a games company?
I think for me, it was realizing that I don't have to do the design. I don't have to be the one to say, this is the game we should be building. Go build it. It's just kind of learning my weaknesses and then surrounding the team with people that can make up for those weaknesses. And I think that for me, that's worked out really well. I mean, Neon Needle was because of this, right? I mean, it's Luke said, this is what we should be doing. Let's do it. And I was like, okay, go do it. So I think for me, that's been the biggest realization.
I imagine the team likes that quite a bit as well, though, because it means, like, for Luke, for example, that's like Neon Needle is his like baby. You know, he's come up with the idea, you know, and you've supported him through that, and I imagine that builds, you know, strong bonds within the team that you've created.
I would hope so. I don't know if Luke could speak to that.
Yeah, I definitely like having the trust to like just work on my own ideas. I don't know if I would say Neon Needle is my baby. It's just, you know, because there's been a few people working on it as well. So
Yeah. What's your brainchild then? Is that more the right word?
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Baby, child, you know.
Okay, guys. So, how would people get to know more about you then? How would they kind of find out what you're doing? What's the best way for people to get in touch?
Listen to Christine.
Yes. Pay attention to me at all times. Our Twitter, at MantisDA, is where I'm focusing the most on engaging the community. We have a Facebook page, which is mainly just the tweets, but I type a little bit more because I can. But I think Twitter's the best, just in my experience with my own company and my game and how that goes. And yeah, I feel like Twitter's can be a really good place to find a good community. So that's where I'm focusing all of my attention. And Koi has got our new website. I think he showed me yesterday, was it? And it looks really good.
Yeah, we've been checking it out for the past like 2 hours now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Like I was running through the old website like the other day, and like this new one's is a bit more spiffy for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. You can't go wrong with a good website. That's going to tell you everything you need to know about people.
Fantastic. And I guess last question to you all: what are you most looking forward to for the rest of 2016? Like game-wise, Twitter-wise, people to follow.
Ooh. That's a good question. I'm just like super in beta mode right now, focusing on the beta we've got coming out. So I don't
Course,
even
yes.
think I can envision past past getting that done. So that's honestly that's the rest of my 2016 as far as I'm concerned, is making sure that the beta test goes smoothly and everybody enjoys it and we get a lot of really good feedback and we can kind of maintain that, you know, beta test, get feedback, work on it. Beta test, get feedback, work on it until we have something that I think we're all really proud of and ready to let loose on the world.
Fantastic. Is it a closed or open beta?
It's a closed beta right now. So you have to sign up. There's 6 more days to sign up if you go to our Twitter, at MantisDA. Like I said, it'll be the pinned tweet, or I tweet about it constantly. So it's just a link that you go and you sign up. And then, so that will close Sunday night. And then I'll send out the information to all the people who signed up on, like, here's what you need to start doing in order to get ready for the beta. And then we'll send that out.
Fantastic stuff. Al, any last words or questions?
Yeah. Does Koi or Luke have anything they're looking forward to?
Yes, that's
So-
true.
I think
Just me.
for me, I would say 2 things. One is finding time to get to my backlog of games that I want to play, that I haven't had time to do. So I picked up Doom the other day.
Yes.
Ooh, I have it. I haven't played it yet.
I picked up Fallout 4 like as soon as it came out, and I still haven't unwrapped it.
Oh my god. There are 2 very good games right there, yeah.
So behind on playing anything. But from a project standpoint that we're working on, probably in the next couple of months, we're going to be kicking off a project where we're building an augmented reality exhibit with a local children's museum. And Luke's actually going to be the one working on that. So we're using some new technology from Microsoft called Room Alive that basically extends the game out into the room around you and kind of wraps it around the room that you're playing in. And so we're going to be building an interactive exhibit for a children's museum where it tracks kids that are coming into this exhibit through multiple Microsoft Kinect sensors, projects game images all around the room where the children are coming in, and then allows them to use 3 physical objects in the room to interact with the game and draw on the walls, crack the walls, interact with animals that are projected onto the room around them. So I think for me, like, out of any project that I could think about for the rest of the year, that's probably the one that's going to be the most exciting.
Yeah, it sounds pretty incredible. I'm actually kind of taken back by that. That's proper new age science right there, you know. How about you, Luke?
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about getting all of these games released. We've had these games like almost ready to be released for so long, and they're just finally ready, and I just really want to get them out there. Aside from that, I'm really excited about the next game engine we're going to be building. Hopefully, we can release that to people as well. And the next game that we're going to be building, which hopefully will be on Xbox and other consoles as well.
Fantastic. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on, really, isn't there, Mantis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, guys, for coming on and like giving us your time. It's a really interesting story that you guys have there, and I look forward to being able to play the Neon Needle beta.
Cool, yeah.
Yay! You'll
Thank
get
you
that
for the
email
time.
soon.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that's
Wow.
been another interview with me, Alistair, and obviously Pete, with all the crew from Mantis Digital Arts. Obviously, this has been Huge Update interviews. You can find us at any link you can normally find us at on Twitter. It's a Huge Update. On Facebook, we don't exist because I don't like Facebook. On YouTube, we're Facebook. We are Huge Update. And you can also find us at our website, which is hugeupdate.squarespace.com. So thank you again for listening, for voting, for doing anything you'd like to support this show. It does help us a lot. And obviously, please go forward and go for the beta test of Neon Needle. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a pretty fun game. And I'm going to be in the beta anyway because I signed up first day as soon as it got announced.
Yay!
So anyway, everybody say goodbye awkwardly as we always do. So goodbye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.